What's going on, guys? It's Nick here, back with another video. Today, we're going to be going over the players you should be targeting in pretty much every single league. Now, I know some of you play standard, some of you play PPR, half point. I'll be going over on each of the players what leagues they're better in, but our advice typically is for PPR leagues or half point PPR leagues, not for standard, because no one should be playing standard. But there's some guys I threw on the list that are much better in standard scoring. I'll be going over that when I get to them, I guess. And how I structured it was basically, I want to just go over each position. So it's not as much a top 5 list. I'm just going over the quarterbacks I'm targeting, the tight ends I'm targeting. It's all of the different positions. Ends up being 22 guys in this list. So obviously, you're not going to get a massively in-depth discussion on them. Check the rankings video. Check other top 5s for that. But I'm going to be going over the players in if I would reach on them, if I would not reach on them, and basically how I feel overall about the players. So before we get into that, a quick update on the website. Premium subscriptions are now available to get the premium rankings, to get access to the chat, to get the in-season benefits, and the DFS lineup. So check the website for that. I'll link it in the description box. I'll put it on the screen. Yesterday, I believe, was the first day we opened it up. So you can now become a premium member and join the chat, which is probably like the best part of that. We've already had a few people sign up, so make sure you check that out. And if you're poor or something, you can't afford it, we do have the free rankings available on the site. But, obviously they're not as good. They're just names. So let's get into this video, and we're going to start off with quarterback. Let's start off with quarterbacks. And these are the 4 guys that I feel are the best value. And I start off with Luck because I think if you're drafting now, that he's like the best value. But his ADP is very likely, in my opinion, going to go up. Once people realize that he's probably going to play the season, I think his ADP rises. If it stays at quarterback 14, I'm his quarterback 11. Obviously, you draft him at that point. But I have a feeling it'll rise. So he's probably not going to be someone I'll target if it gets up into that quarterback 6 or 7 range. But if it stays around quarterback 10, I'm perfectly fine taking a shot on that. He's finished his quarterback 9, 12, 2, and 4 on seasons that he wasn't hurt. So if he's not hurt, he's going to exceed his ADP. But again, I'm only targeting while he stays at that ADP. Patrick Mahomes is next in terms of ADP at quarterback 16. He's my quarterback 13. It's basically just, yes, there's a lot of unknown, but he's got Tyreek, he's got Watkins, he's got Kelsey, he's got Hunt, and he loves to throw the ball deep. It is the perfect team for him. He is not afraid to chuck the ball deep, and he's got a ton of guys that can catch it deep. And he's got a great run game. So I think he's a phenomenal pick that does come with a pretty safe floor at quarterback 16. A better pick, in my opinion, and the best pick in the draft. In my opinion, I don't know that there's really a better pick at the quarterback position. Is Jameis Winston. My quarterback 10, I've been flip-flopping him a little bit in that 8 to 11 range, but right now it's at quarterback 10. He's got Evans. He's got Jackson as a deep threat. He's got a young, amazing tight end in Howard. He's got Godwin, a young developing wide receiver. And he's got Jones, a new good running back to improve the run game. Final 5 weeks last season, averaged 317 yards and 1.8 touchdowns. That was good for quarterback 5, 12, 3, 5, and 3. Remember, that's when he came back from injury. He was hurt to start the year. But he's developing very, very nicely into a phenomenal quarterback. Remember, he's very young. He's got young players around him. I think he has a breakout year this season, and I don't know why he's going so late. It still baffles me how people could possibly draft guys in the middle rounds and then round 7, 8, 9 when Winston will probably score the exact same, if not more points than them, and he's going in the 14th. So that makes no sense to me. Another guy that makes no sense is Mariota. He had one bad season, but all of a sudden recency bias is just the greatest thing nowadays. We look at a guy that had one down year, and all of a sudden he's bad. No, the offensive coordinator was garbage. Watch one Titans game and tell me he had a chance to produce a good year. One. New offensive coordinator should fix that offense. A healthy Corey Davis. Remember, he was hurt to start the year. He's got training camp now. He has time to develop. I think the Titans are going to have a great year on offense, but I really think Mariota has a chance to finish as probably a top 7 or 8 option. I have him at 14 just because there are a lot of quarterbacks I like, but he's a phenomenal value too. So if you want to say that the best value isn't Winston, it's Mariota. Draft any of those guys. Let's move on to wide receiver and T.Y. Hilton. Okay, so first off, Remember, not a top 5 list. There's going to be 6 wide receivers, I believe. 6 wide receivers I'm going to talk about. They're just going in order of ADP, not in order of how I like them. I would say that look at the difference. If I have T.Y. Hilton at wide receiver 15 and then I rank him at wide receiver 12, well, that's 3. If a guy has like a 15 difference, okay, I like him a little bit more than ADP. So just keep that in mind. This isn't like a sequential list, just ADP. So T.Y. Hilton starting off with wide receiver 15. My wide receiver 12, so I like him a little more than consensus does. He's had over 1,000 yards in 4 of his past 5 seasons, and he almost did it again, almost made it 5 in a row with Brissett at quarterback. I mean, he had nothing to throw him the ball. Luck's coming back. He's going to be a wide receiver 1 if Luck is back, and he's not being drafted that way. So I think he's a great guy to target in the early rounds. I think Diggs is one of my favorite early round picks. I haven't drafted him a ton, but we haven't also done that many drafts where I've been in this position to draft him. I feel like I've done a lot of drafts from like the mid first round, and he just like hasn't really been there. But absolutely, if he's in the range, I'm drafting him. 2nd highest wide receiver rating last season, 3rd highest catch rate on deep targets, 12th best production premium for wide receivers, and then he's only 24 years old. In Dynasty, I think he's an outstanding pick. I think people think that he's older than he is. He's still approaching that range where wide receivers break out. I think he's a phenomenal pick because even on a points per game basis, basically the shade people throw at him is that he can't stay healthy. But guess what? You don't have to start him in those 2 or 3 games that he's out. Points per game, he's awesome. He's getting a huge upgrade at quarterback. That offense is going to score a lot of touchdowns. He was great in the red zone last season. If he misses 3 games, then you figure out a bench option to get you 3 games. It's not that difficult to find. So I think him and T.Y. are 2 guys I'd really target in that like wide receiver 10 to 15 kind of range. Another guy I'm really targeting there is Alshon. I have a pretty big difference in the rankings there. He's going as wide receiver 21. I have wide receiver 15. He is one guy that's better in standard. So if you are in a standard league and you want a guy in those early rounds to target, I would say Alshon's your guy. With Wentz back, with another year under his belt in that offense, I think he's gonna put up some pretty decent numbers. And he had the torn rotator cuff last season, which is obviously tough for a wide receiver going up and getting balls. But I think that it was just a combination of you're on a new team, you've got a quarterback that didn't play the full season, you're injured. I mean, 60 of his 113 targets were catchable. So he had 53 targets that were not even catchable. It was a tough season for him, and he still put together a pretty solid finish to the year. So I like targeting him. I think people are down on him more than they really should be. Moving on the list, we got Devin Funchess, and he's a guy that I understand the lack of upside, but I also understand that he's a very safe pick. And this is the range, if you remember back to when your picks hit, the frequency that your picks hit in certain rounds, this is the range where it really starts to drop. So if you can lock up your best odd picks before this, and then you pick a safe option and make sure that you don't pick a guy that busts, I think that's a smart way to go. I mean, there are certain rounds where you can forego upside for safety. And I think some of the middle rounds are where you do that. You go for the upside early. You only go for upside late. But in the middle rounds, if you can lock up a guy like Funchess, if some of the picks tank around you, then you've got a guy that has some decent touchdown upside. And maybe he doesn't have the greatest ceiling, but that will be involved in the offense and that will get you points. So I like targeting him as like that wide receiver 25 range, about 7 over ADP. Now we'll just move on to the 2 guys that are going pretty late in drafts that I just like. I like these guys, having them on my team. I think Rashard Matthews, right now, we can't be 100% sure that he's the 2. Obviously, there are some guys that could take over in camp, but right now, and in my opinion, what will happen is he'll be the 2 on the Titans, and an offense that I think is going to be greatly improved and is going to be more pass-oriented. Remember, they tried to just run the football every play last season, and obviously that doesn't work. So on a team that has a really good quarterback, that should be on the rise with new offensive coordinator. He's the number 2, but he's being drafted as wide receiver 54. So that doesn't make much sense to me. I don't have him massively above that, but I think that he's a great value late in draft. So he's someone I target late, and then I target Lockett in almost every draft late because I don't get wide receiver 56. He's the 2. It's not Brandon Marshall. He's the number 2. And when you're the number 2 for Russell Wilson, who likes to scramble, and you're really fast and you can get open deep, you're going to have some huge weeks. Now, will it be frustrating to own him? Probably. Is he better for best ball? Yes, he's a much better best ball pick. Is he better in standard scoring? I don't know that there's really an answer to that. I think that he's pretty similar in both, but that we shouldn't really expect a ton of touchdowns from him. So I wouldn't really change the ranking much in standard versus PPR, whereas Alshon could have a really high touchdown year. I don't really see Lockett having a massive touchdown ceiling, but he's also not really like a strictly PPR target. So I would say that he's just a good target late in both formats. So those are some guys I like targeting early, mid, and late for the wide receiver position. So moving on to tight ends, I gave you an entire draft. I mean, if you like targeting tight ends early, like targeting them in the middle, targeting them in late rounds, I gave you everyone. So starting off with Jimmy Graham, I'm not concerned about the whole Aaron Rodgers doesn't throw tight ends thing. I think that he just, in recent years, hasn't had anyone worth throwing the football to. And Jimmy Graham is certainly someone who's worth throwing the football to. 14 targets inside the 5-yard line last season. That's insane. I mean, that's absolutely insane. I think he takes away from Devonta Adams. And I think that he has 15 touchdown upside. He absolutely has that. Will it happen? I mean, I'm not going to project anyone for that many touchdowns, but it could happen. It really could. So I think he's a great pick, better in standard than in PPR, but I think he's great in both. I'll say that pretty much tight ends, it doesn't really matter, standard versus PPR. Once you get past like the first couple, they're all like, they all have the same upside in both. You know, when you look at the Doyles and Howards and Njokus, they're the exact same in standard and PPR. They could get lucky. It's variance on your side in standard, and I mean, if they get lucky, they're only within a few receptions of what they would have been. So I don't think that you need to skew one way or the other. I think any set of rankings will suit you fine for PPR or standard. But the next guy is Rudolph, and he is, again, like Graham, slightly better in standard. I have him as tight end 5. I've already talked about him plenty, so I don't want to go super in-depth on him, but he's a guy in the middle rounds. If you're looking at wide receivers and running backs and it's just gross and you just don't know who to draft, just draft Rudolph. I think that's a good strategy to have if you're in that mid-round range and you just don't even know, like you don't like any of the quarterbacks or the running backs or the wide receivers. Instead of just picking someone random, just pick a tight end. Just pick a tight end that you like. Mine's Rudolph. You could go Delaney Walker. I just prefer Rudolph over Walker. But then I prefer drafting tight end late. So I like going after the Doyles, the Njokus, the Howards of the world. I think that Njoku and Howard, I have the exact same bullet points here because this is who I target. These are the tight ends that I target. Crazy workout metrics. First round draft capital for a tight end on an improved offense. For Njoku, the quarterback doesn't matter. Taylor loves targeting tight ends. And then Baker Mayfield, we have to assume, is pretty good at football. And improved offense for the Bucs. I think that getting Winston back fully healthy with an improved run game, they're going to have more scoring chances, and that's great for O.J. Howard. So I think both of those are awesome picks late. I think Doyle's being underrated. I have him at tight end 13, but I mean, my rankings aren't exactly final yet, but you don't always have to go by rankings. I think that if you're in this range and you like Doyle, you could take him over Howard and Njoku. I think he's a guy that you should target. Second highest catch rate from the slot. We know that with Luck back, it's going to be a little bit better for the offense than under Brissett, and he had a perfectly good year with Brissett. So I think everyone on this list is great to target. If I had to target one, it would just be your preference over the Doyle, Njoku, Howard. And I guess for me in that range, it's Howard, but I'm fine with absolutely anyone on this list. Let's move on to the running back position, and we've got another 7. We got another 7 guys for you, and again, I'm just going to briefly touch on them, not go super in depth. We will go in depth in the running back rankings video, but we're going to start off with Barkley And I made a video specifically talking about Saquon Barkley. So you guys already know I'm drafting him over Antonio Brown in standard and in PPR scoring formats. I think he's one of the best prospects we've ever seen, and probably the best since Adrian Peterson. I think that hitting on a running back is so important, and he has such a great chance to do that, to hit, that I just can't pass. I can't pass on that. So I'm drafting Barkley very high. He'll be on a lot of my teams if I'm lucky enough to have, a top 5 pick. Dalvin Cook, his team is elite, and that's what I look for running backs. I want guys on really good offenses that will have a lot of scoring chances, and that's exactly what Dalvin Cook is. I am 3 above ADP at running back 7. He'll be on a lot of my teams. Doubt you could ever draft Barkley and Cook, but that would probably be the greatest start to a draft ever. He's a decent pass catcher, but not a phenomenal one. But with McKinnon gone, you've got to think the floor is just crazy. Barkley's got a great floor for receptions, but so does Cook. He wasn't that great last season with the drops, but he's had an offseason to improve on that. He'll be back from the injury. I think he's a great pick. Royce Freeman I'm targeting in those middle rounds. Booker just hasn't proven to be anything more than an occasional third down back. So I think that Freeman just doesn't have any competition there. They might say that there's competition, but come the middle of the season, I don't think it'll even be close. It's a great defense, unimproved offense. What do I always say? What do I always say about running backs? You want positive game script. Well, if you want positive game script, have a good offense and have a great defense. They got both. It's not a prolific offense, but it's improved from last season. I think Keenum's a good quarterback that can keep the ball moving more than they did last year. Marlon Mack, remember how I talk about the Colts every 3 seconds? Yeah, well, target Marlon Mack. He just turned 22 in March. He's younger than Chubb. He's younger than Penny. He's younger than Michelle. He's younger than Balaj. Oh, and he's also younger than Jordan Wilkins. He is younger than Jordan Wilkins. Wilkins is... I don't get the hype for Wilkins. Wilkins is essentially an older, less athletic running back drafted later who hasn't been in the system for an entire season like Mack has, who isn't as good as a pass catcher, and was less productive in college. Is there a case for Wilkins over Mack? Not in drafting, but in if you're the Colts. And if you want to play the pass blocking angle, okay, Marlon Mack learned to be a better pass blocker. People can improve over time. Look at Ty Montgomery. He went from terrible to good. Ty Montgomery was awful, and then he was good. Well, Marlon Mack was bad in college, but he had a positive grade last season in pass blocking. And his grade was better than Wilkins. Wilkins is better than him in nothing. Absolutely nothing. So I don't see the concern over Mack's job. I think it's Hines is going to be a third down back, and I think Mack's going to be early downs, with Wilkins just taking a few here and there. But I think if you're going to get the early down back on the Colts, I don't understand how he's going as running back 29. I think that's a phenomenal value. So target him. Last 4 guys we're targeting. Kerryon Johnson, I really, really like. That should be a greatly improved offensive line. We know that Blunt is garbage. We've said it millions of times on this channel. And he has 250 touch upside. He just does. I mean, what if something happened to Theo Riddick, which we've seen before? What if he got hurt? Do you understand that Kerryon Johnson would then have RB1 upside? Getting the third down work on a team that's pretty good. I mean, that's going to be a good team with a good offensive line. They just got Ragnow. They're a good team. They're not a great team, but they target the running back. You don't have to be in on third down to get a target. Just because you're not getting the third down work doesn't mean you're going to have 0 receptions. So if something were to happen to Theo, this guy's got RB1 upside. And I think even if something doesn't happen to him, he's going to produce. So I think it's just crazy that he's going this late. Chubb, I think it's also crazy he's going that late. Look at this man's workout metrics. 98th percentile SparkX score. 89th percentile height adjusted speed score. He's dominant. He is a fantastic running back. He is the most talented running back on that team by a lot. Sure, Duke's going to come in on third downs, but they know what they have in Chubb, or they wouldn't have spent an early second round pick on him. Sure, Hyde's there. Great. They're not going to intentionally lose games by playing Hyde. They've already done that for 2 seasons. Not the playing Hyde part, but the losing and losing and losing. They finally have a good offense. They're not going to waste it by giving the ball to Hyde. Hyde's garbage, and they know that. It's going to be Nick Chubb. I promise you that. Hines, I kind of already talked about, but you're getting the 3rd down back for Andrew Luck. That has a ton of value. So going as RB 52, basically undrafted, that's nuts. Does he have, RB1 upside? No, of course not. He just doesn't. But does he have value late in the draft to get you through bye weeks and injuries, especially if you're going RB0? Certainly does. So he's a great value. And then Dixon, I like even more than Hines. I think that he's got the potential to just completely take over Collins. I personally think that he's being ridiculously undervalued. I don't understand how just missing a season, like people were so excited to take him last year, and then he misses a season, and all of a sudden no one wants him. But not really much has changed except the offense got better, presumably. It looks better, but it's Baltimore, so who knows? But we don't actually know. Like, we haven't seen him that much, and from what we've seen, he's pretty good. So he has the potential to take over Collins. You're getting him as running back 61. He's this guy I love targeting late. And that was it. I think, I'm not going to lie, I said 22 early, but I swear there was 23 when I was just going through there. But anyways, however many that was, those are the guys you should be targeting in your drafts. Oh, the stat of the day. Never fear. We have a stat of the day. Yesterday, Logan Devine, I believe, don't quote me on this, but I believe was the only person to say it. If he wasn't the only person, then very few people got it. Answer was Mohamed Sanu. Ton of people thought it was Rashard Matthews. It was not. The answer was Mohamed Sanu. Today, pretty interesting one. I was kind of surprised, just kind of running through the stats on Pro Football Focus, and I just came across this one. What team had 4 running backs to be in on at least 90 pass blocking snaps? All of them had to play at least 90 pass blocking snaps. And all of them had over a 25% pass blocking percentage. So this team had 4 running backs, play at least 90 pass blocking snaps, and at least 25% of each of those players' snaps was in pass protection. There were only 11 total running backs to do this last season, and 4 of them were on one team. What team is that? That is it. That is it for today's video. Hope you guys did enjoy. If you did, how about hit that like button? Subscribe if you are new. Thanks for watching.